The diplomatic shuttle touched down on Torvin Prime just as the twin suns began their descent below the Crystal Mountains. Rachel Webb stepped onto the landing platform and immediately felt the weight of what was about to happen. She had been to dozens of worlds in her career as a xenobiologist, witnessed countless alien customs and ceremonies, but nothing quite like this. Today she would watch an entire species cease to exist. The planetary officials escorted her through corridors that seemed carved from living glass. Everything on this world reflected light in ways that hurt human eyes. The Torvins themselves were crystalline beings, their bodies composed of interlocking geometric patterns that shifted and glowed with their thoughts. They had ruled 40 star systems for over 1,000 years with absolute authority, and nobody questioned their decisions. At least nobody who wanted to keep breathing. "The ceremony begins in one rotation," her escort said, its voice chiming like struck crystal. "You will observe from the diplomatic gallery. Do not speak unless addressed directly by King Dowrick himself." Rachel nodded. She had read the briefing materials 100 times during the journey here. The star dragons had once moved freely through the galaxy, massive creatures that could survive in the vacuum of space. They fed on solar radiation and sang songs that could be heard across light years. 200 years ago, one of them destroyed a Torvin colony world, killing millions. King Dowrick decreed that all star dragons must die for that crime. The hunt had taken 2 centuries, but now only one remained. They called her Sorrow. The Sovereign Hall stretched out before Rachel like a canyon made of mirrors. Thousands of beings from hundreds of worlds filled the tiered seating, all here to witness justice. Or revenge. Rachel was never quite sure which word applied here. At the center of the hall, a containment field glowed with fierce blue energy. Inside that field, chained with bonds of pure force, lay the last star dragon. Rachel had seen images, of course, but nothing prepared her for the reality. Sorrow was enormous, easily the size of a passenger shuttle. Her scales shifted between colors like oil on water, purple bleeding into green bleeding into gold. 4 massive wings lay folded against her sides, useless here, where the gravity was cranked up to crushing levels. Her neck stretched out along the floor, too tired to lift the massive wedge-shaped head more than a few feet. But her eyes, those eyes tracked everything in the hall with sharp intelligence. Not the dull gaze of an animal, but the focused attention of someone who understood exactly what was happening. Rachel took her seat in the diplomatic section, surrounded by representatives from the human coalition worlds. Most of them looked uncomfortable. Humans had only joined the galactic community 50 years ago, and they still struggled with some of the harsher realities of how things worked out here. The strong made the rules. The weak followed them or died. It was that simple. All rise for King Dowrick the Eternal, sovereign of the Torvin Empire, Lord of 40 suns, guardian of the Crystal Throne. The voice boomed through translation devices in a dozen languages simultaneously. The crowd stood as one. Rachel rose with them, craning her neck to see the king as he entered the hall. Dowrick was old, not just old by Torvin standards, but ancient by any measure. His crystalline body had facets worn smooth by centuries of existence. Light moved through him in slow, deliberate patterns. He walked without assistance, but each step seemed carefully considered, as if he had to remember how to command his limbs. He settled onto the crystal throne, and the crowd sat. Silence fell across the hall like a heavy blanket. "We are gathered to witness the end of a dark chapter in galactic history," King Dowrick began. His words manifested as patterns of light that danced above his head before the translators converted them to sound. The star dragons were a blight upon civilization. They roamed free, acknowledging no law but their own desires. They took what they wanted and destroyed what displeased them. 200 years ago, one of their kind reduced the world of Helvet 7 to ash and dust. Millions of Torvin citizens perished in moments. Today, we ensure such a tragedy can never happen again. Rachel felt her jaw tighten. She had done her research. The official story was clean and simple, but the classified files she had accessed through back channels told a different tale. Helvet 7 had not been a simple colony world. It had been a research facility, and the star dragons had not always been the monsters Dowrick described. However, the king continued, and something in his tone made Rachel's attention snap back to him. I am not without mercy. Even for the last of a criminal species, I will show the wisdom and compassion that has defined my reign. Sorrow, last of the star dragons, I grant you one final request before sentence is carried out. Speak, if you have anything to say. The hall went absolutely silent. Rachel realized she was holding her breath. Sorrow had not spoken in decades, according to the records. Most assumed she had gone mad from the isolation and imprisonment. Some thought she had simply given up. For a long moment, nothing happened. The dragon lay still, her eyes half closed. Then slowly her massive head lifted. The chains of force flickered and sparked as she moved against them. Her mouth opened, revealing teeth like swords. When she spoke, her voice rumbled through the hall like distant thunder, translated into every language by the universal systems. The words were simple, so simple that for a moment Rachel thought she had misheard. Tell me a joke. The hall erupted in shocked murmurs. Rachel saw King Dowrick's light patterns flicker, and what she had learned was the Torvan equivalent of surprise. Around her, diplomats exchanged confused glances. Some species laughed at the absurdity. Others looked offended on the king's behalf. But Rachel watched the dragon's eyes, and in those ancient, intelligent eyes, she saw something that made her heart race. This was not a random request. This was not madness or resignation. This was strategy. Sorrow had just made the first move in a game that nobody else had realized was beginning. Rachel leaned forward in her seat. Suddenly, this execution had become a lot more interesting. Chancellor Bryn stepped forward from his position beside the throne. His crystalline body pulsed with rapid light patterns that Rachel had learned meant agitation or anger. Your Majesty, this creature mocks you. Humor is beneath the dignity of the crystal throne. I recommend we proceed with the execution immediately. King Dowrick raised one faceted hand. The gesture brought instant silence. His light pattern slowed to a thoughtful rhythm. Rachel could see him processing the situation, turning it over in his ancient mind. The king was known for his pride, his obsession with being perceived as wise. That pride was warring with his anger right now. Rachel made a decision. She stood up. Your Majesty, if I may speak. Her voice carried in the quiet hall. Every eye turned toward her. She felt the weight of thousands of gazes, most of them hostile. Humans were still newcomers here, barely trusted. The human speaks out of turn, Bryn said, his light patterns flashing angry crimson. Let her speak, Dowrick said. We claim to be civilized. We allow all voices to be heard. Rachel took a breath and hoped she was not about to get herself killed. Your Majesty, across the galaxy, humor is recognized as a sign of higher intelligence. It requires abstract thought, the ability to see from multiple perspectives simultaneously, and an understanding of social context. The Star Dragon's request is not mockery. It is a demonstration that she possesses the very qualities that define sapient beings. She paused, then played her real card. By granting her request, you would show not just mercy, but wisdom. You would prove that even in delivering justice, the Torvan Empire acknowledges the intelligence of those it judges. The king's light patterns swirled in complex geometries. Rachel knew she had touched the right nerve. Dowrick cared deeply about his reputation, about being seen as more than just powerful. He wanted to be remembered as wise. An interesting argument, the king said slowly. Tell me, human, do your people value humor? We do, Your Majesty. We believe that the ability to laugh, especially at oneself, is a mark of maturity and wisdom. Dowrick was quiet for a long time. The hall waited. Finally, his light patterns settled into a golden glow. Very well. I will grant this final request. I will tell the Star Dragon a joke. Let none say that Dowrick the Eternal lacks the capacity for any form of intelligent discourse. Rachel sat down, her legs shaking. Beside her, another human diplomat leaned over. "That was either brilliant or suicidal," he whispered. "We will find out which," Rachel whispered back. The king conferred with Chancellor Bryn and several other advisors. They spoke in their native light language, too fast for the translators to catch. Rachel watched sorrow. The dragon had lowered her head again, but her eyes remained alert, fixed on the throne. After 10 minutes that felt like hours, King Dowrick stood. "I have prepared my joke. It is a matter of some complexity, as befits my intellect and experience." He launched into a long, elaborate story about 3 administrators from different worlds who had to negotiate a trade agreement. The joke involved historical references to treaties from 5 different eras, complex plays on words that only made sense if you understood ancient Torvan political structure, and a punchline that required knowledge of obscure economic theory. When he finished, the court offered polite acknowledgement. Light patterns flickered in what might have been appreciation or might have been confusion. Rachel honestly was not sure anyone in the hall actually understood what the king had just said. Then Sorrow laughed. It started as a low rumble deep in her massive chest. Then it built, rolling through her entire body, shaking the chains that bound her. Her wings twitched. Her tail, which had lain motionless for years, thumped against the floor. The sound that came from her throat was unmistakable, genuine, deep, uncontrollable laughter. The hall stared in shock. The dragon laughed for a full 30 seconds before she could control herself enough to speak. "Oh, that is good. That is very good, Your Majesty." Dowrick's light patterns shifted to satisfied gold. "You understand the humor, then. I was not certain a star dragon could grasp the subtleties of Torvan political economy." "I understand it perfectly," Sorrow said, and there was something dangerous in her tone now, something that made Rachel sit up straighter. "In fact, I understand it better than you do." The satisfied gold flickered to confused white. "Explain yourself." "Your joke was about how the 3 administrators each thought they were manipulating the others, but in reality, they were all being manipulated by their own assumptions. The punchline was that by the end of negotiations, each one had agreed to the exact opposite of what they came to secure, and none of them realized it." "Precisely," the king said, his tone growing defensive. "That was indeed the point." "But, Your Majesty, you missed your own joke. You described your entire approach to the Star Dragons perfectly. You came to this hall certain you were delivering justice, but what you have actually secured is the end of the only species that could have helped you with the coming crisis." The hall went dead silent. Rachel felt her blood run cold. What was Sorrow doing? King Dowrick's light patterns turned harsh red. "What crisis? Speak plainly, dragon." "The Torvan Empire has been expanding for 1,000 years. You have consumed system after system, resource after resource. But star dragons could sense the flows of solar radiation across the galaxy. We knew where the dead zones were forming, where stars were dying ahead of schedule because of industrial overconsumption. We tried to warn the younger species, but they did not listen. Neither did you." Bryn stepped forward. "These are lies, Your Majesty, desperate fabrications from a creature facing death." But Dowrick held up his hand again. "Let her finish. Within 50 of your years, 3 of your core systems will experience stellar collapse. Billions will die unless someone can predict and manage the radiation flows. Star dragons could have taught you. We would have helped despite everything. But you hunted us. And now I am the last. And soon I will be dead. And billions of your people will follow me." Rachel's mind raced. She pulled out her data tablet and started searching the scientific databases. If this was true, if there were signs of stellar instability in Torvan space, someone would have noticed. Somewhere there would be data. King Dowrick stood frozen on his throne. His light pattern cycled through a dozen colors, unable to settle. Finally, he spoke, and his voice was different now, less certain. You said you would explain my joke. You have done so. Now I will tell another. Sorrow's eyes gleamed. Another joke, Your Majesty. Yes, but this time I wish to understand it fully. If you can laugh at the second joke, if you can explain it, I will postpone this execution. I will have my scientists verify your claims about the stars, and if you have lied, your death will be far slower than planned. Rachel realized she was gripping her armrests hard enough to hurt. The dragon had just bought herself time. Not freedom, not life, but time. And sometimes time was all you needed. 3 days had passed since the king's announcement. Rachel had been granted limited access to study sorrow, officially to help interpret any future responses. In reality, everyone knew the king wanted human perspective on what was happening. Humans understood humor in ways that many older species did not. The containment field hummed with power as Rachel approached. She carried her scanning equipment, though she knew the guards would have already cleared it 6 times. Security around the dragon had tripled. Nobody wanted to take chances now that the execution had become something else entirely. "Hello, Sorrow," Rachel said quietly. She was alone in the observation area. The guards stood outside, watching through the crystal walls but unable to hear. The dragon's massive head turned toward her. Up close, Rachel could see the scars that crisscrossed Sorrow's scales. Centuries of imprisonment had taken their toll, burns from the containment field, marks from forced chains. The dragon was dying slowly, had been dying for years. "Hello, Rachel Webb." The dragon's voice resonated at frequencies that made Rachel's bones vibrate. "You risked much to help me." "I spoke the truth, that is all." "Truth can be more dangerous than lies." Sorrow shifted, and the chains sparked against her scales. "Come closer, I will not hurt you." Rachel hesitated only a moment before stepping up to the containment field's edge. She was close enough now to see her reflection in Sorrow's eyes, close enough to see the intelligence that burned there despite the physical decay. "Can you really predict stellar collapse?" Rachel asked. "Yes, star dragons are born in solar winds. We feed on radiation. We can feel the rhythms of stars the way you feel your own heartbeat. A dying star has a different song. It stutters. It screams. We can hear it years before your instruments detect any change." "And you were telling the truth about the Torvin systems." Sorrow's eyes held hers. "I never lie, Rachel Webb. I do not have enough time left for lies." Rachel pulled out her tablet. "I found something. 3 days ago I would not have known where to look, but once I knew what to search for, the data was there. Buried in scientific surveys, dismissed as instrument error or statistical noise. But it is there. Stellar radiation in 3 Torvin core systems is fluctuating outside normal parameters." "Which systems?" "Torvin 6, Torvin 12, and Torvin 19. Sorrow closed her eyes. "Yes, those 3. Torvin 6 will go first, approximately 47 years from now. Then the others will follow in cascade." Rachel sat down on the cold crystal floor. "If I show this to the king, if I confirm your claim, what happens then?" He must choose. Admit that his people made a terrible mistake, or maintain the lie and let billions die. Why tell him at all? Why not just let the Torvins face the consequences of what they did to your people? Sorrow opened her eyes again. "Because I am not them, Rachel. The Torvins who experimented on my mother, who drove her mad, who caused her to destroy Helvet 7 in her pain and rage, those Torvins are mostly dead now. The current generation inherited a lie, yes, but they also inherited the consequences. Should children pay for their grandparents' crimes?" Rachel thought about that. Most humans would say yes, we are big on justice. Justice and revenge are not the same thing. I learned that during my first century of imprisonment. The dragon lowered her head until it rested on the floor. "I have had a long time to think, Rachel. A very long time. I could have stayed silent, let the stars die, let the Torvins perish. But what would that accomplish? My people would still be gone, and I would die knowing I could have prevented suffering but chose not to. I would become the monster they believe me to be. Rachel understood then. Sorrow was not playing a game or seeking revenge. She was trying to save the very people who had destroyed her species. The realization hurt something deep in Rachel's chest. "The king is preparing his second joke," Rachel said quietly. "He has been working on it for 3 days. He consulted human comedy databases. He even watched recordings of human comedians. I think he wants to understand." Good, understanding is the first step. A chiming sound echoed through the chamber. Rachel checked her tablet. "I have to go. The king wants to see me." "Rachel," Sorrow's voice stopped her at the door. "When this is over, when I am dead, tell them what really happened. Tell them my mother was not evil. She was in pain. Tell them star dragons sang to the stars and danced in solar winds. Tell them we were not monsters." "I will," Rachel promised. "I swear it." The walk to the king's private chambers took 15 minutes. Rachel used the time to prepare herself. She had never been granted a private audience before. Most humans never even saw the inside of the Crystal Palace beyond the public halls. King Dowrick sat in a smaller chamber, one with walls that looked out over the Crystal Mountains. Without the crowd, without the theater of the throne room, he seemed different. Smaller somehow, despite his massive crystalline form. "Please sit, Rachel Webb." He gestured to a crystalline bench. Rachel sat. The king did not speak for a long time. He simply stared out at the mountains, his light patterns cycling through muted blues and purples. "I have been king for 1,047 years, he said finally. "In that time I have made countless decisions. I have ended wars, created laws, judged millions of cases. I believed I understood wisdom. I believed I understood justice." He turned to look at her. "Then a dying dragon asked me to tell her a joke, and suddenly I am not certain I understand anything at all." Rachel stayed quiet. Sometimes the best thing you could do was listen. "My advisors tell me the dragon is manipulating me, that she plays on my pride to delay her execution, that the stellar collapse claims are fabrications designed to create doubt." His light patterns flickered. "Are they right, Rachel Webb? In your human judgment, am I being manipulated?" Rachel chose her words carefully. "Your Majesty, I cannot tell you what to believe, but I can tell you what I have found. The stellar data supports Sorrow's claims. The patterns are there. Subtle, yes, but real. Your scientists should verify this independently." "I have already ordered such verification. The results will take weeks." He turned back to the mountains. "In the meantime, I must tell the dragon a joke, and I find myself wanting it to be good, not to impress the court, not to prove my intelligence, but because I genuinely want to make her laugh." He looked at Rachel again. "Is that strange, to care about the opinion of someone I intended to execute?" "No, Your Majesty," Rachel said softly. "That is called recognizing someone as a person. It is the opposite of strange. It is the beginning of wisdom." The king's light patterns turned golden, warm. "Tomorrow I will tell my second joke. Will you be there?" "I would not miss it." As Rachel left the chamber, she felt something she had not felt since arriving on Torvin Prime: hope. The Sovereign Hall filled quickly the next morning. Word had spread across the planet and beyond. What had started as an execution had become something the galaxy had never seen before. A king learning to laugh. A dragon teaching her executioner. The broadcasts were being watched on thousands of worlds. Rachel took her seat early and watched the crowd gather. She noticed something different this time. The atmosphere had changed. People were not here for blood anymore. They were here for something else. Curiosity, maybe, or hope that something unprecedented might happen. Chancellor Bryn stood near the throne, and his light patterns were sharp, angry reds and blacks. He had spent the last 3 days trying to convince the king to end this spectacle. Rachel had heard the rumors. Bryn believed the king was making the empire look weak. King Dowrick entered without fanfare this time. He walked directly to the center of the hall, standing just outside Sorrow's containment field. The dragon lifted her head to meet his gaze. "I have studied your people's concept of humor," the king began. His voice carried through the hall without translation devices. He was speaking in standard galactic common, not his native light language. "I have learned that humor often comes from unexpected connections, from seeing familiar things in new ways, from recognizing shared experiences." He paused. "I have prepared a joke based on these principles. It is simpler than my first attempt. I hope you find it worthy." The king told a story about a young crystalline being who tried to learn to swim in water. The being kept sinking because its density was all wrong. It tried for years, studying the physics, calculating buoyancy, building devices. Finally, an old water-based creature told it, "Some things are not meant for everyone, and that is perfectly fine." The being realized it did not need to swim. It could shine light through water instead, creating beauty in ways the water creature never could. The hall was quiet when the king finished. Then Sorrow made a sound that took Rachel a moment to identify. It was softer than her previous laughter, gentler. "That was good, Your Majesty, genuinely good. You understand now that humor is not about complexity. It is about truth wrapped in kindness." Dowrick's light patterns glowed warm gold. "Did I tell it correctly? Was the structure right?" "The structure was perfect, but more importantly, the heart was right. You told a story about accepting what you are instead of forcing yourself to be something else." Sorrow's eyes gleamed. "May I tell you a joke in return?" The king looked surprised. "Please, I would be honored." Sorrow settled her head more comfortably on the floor. Long ago, a young star dragon met a young crystalline being in the space between two stars. The dragon was curious about the strange creature that seemed made of captured light. The crystalline being was curious about the strange creature that seemed made of living darkness. They were both terrified of each other. The dragon thought, "This being will shatter me with its light." The crystalline being thought, "This creature will consume me with its shadow." They circled each other for days, afraid to approach, afraid to leave. Finally, hunger drove them both toward the same dying star. They needed to feed, both of them, but from different aspects of the same source. The dragon fed on the radiation storms. The crystalline being absorbed the pure light frequencies. They fed side by side and realized something. The dragon's scales absorbed the dangerous radiation that would have harmed the crystalline being. The crystalline being's facets focused the light into patterns that helped the dragon navigate. They protected each other without meaning to. When they finished feeding, they looked at each other and understood. They had wasted days in fear when they could have been helping each other all along. The joke is this: they were afraid of the very qualities that made them perfect companions. The hall was absolutely silent. Rachel felt tears on her cheeks and did not bother to wipe them away. The story was not just a joke. It was a confession, an offering, a mirror held up to everything that had happened between the Torvins and the Star Dragons. King Dowrick stood motionless. His light patterns cycled through colors Rachel had never seen before, complex geometries that might have been emotions too subtle for human understanding. "I see," he said finally. His voice was different, quieter. "I see what you are saying." "Do you, Your Majesty?" Sorrow asked gently. "Do you truly see? My people hunted yours because we feared you, because you could survive where we could not, because you moved through space with a freedom we envied. We told ourselves it was about justice, about the colony you destroyed. But the hunting began before that, did it not?" Sorrow closed her eyes. "Yes, it began the moment your scientists realized our scales could be used to shield ships from radiation. The moment you saw us as resources instead of people. My mother destroyed Helvet 7 because she was trying to free the other dragons imprisoned there. She was in pain. She was driven mad by experiments, but she was also trying to save her children." Chancellor Bryn stepped forward. "Your Majesty, this is enough. The creature admits her kind attacked us first. She confesses to the crime. Execute her now and be done with this circus." But the king held up his hand. "No, Bryn, I will hear the rest." Sorrow continue. "There is little more to tell. Your people learned to fear what they first tried to exploit. The fear became hatred. The hatred became law, and here we are. I am the last, and soon I will be gone, and both our species will be poorer for it." King Dowrick walked closer to the containment field, so close that the energy made his crystalline body spark and shimmer. "You knew all of this when you asked me for a joke. You knew exactly what you were doing." "Yes. You were not trying to delay your death. You were trying to teach me to see you as a person before I killed you." "Yes." The king was quiet for a very long time. Then he turned to face the assembled crowd. "I adjourn this session. I must consult with my scientific advisors regarding the stellar data. When we reconvene, I will announce my decision regarding the Star Dragon's fate." Bryn's light patterns flashed furious crimson. "Your Majesty, you cannot possibly be considering clemency for this creature." "I am considering the truth, Bryn, something we should have done 200 years ago." As the crowd dispersed, Rachel made her way toward the containment field. The guards tried to stop her, but the king waved them aside. "Go to her," he said to Rachel. "I think she has little time left, whether I execute her or not." Rachel knelt beside the containment field. Sorrow's breathing was labored. The dragon looked smaller somehow, as if the conversation had drained something vital from her. "Did I do the right thing?" Sorrow whispered, "trying to save them." "Yes," Rachel said, "you did exactly the right thing." "I am so tired, Rachel." "I know, but you have to hold on a little longer. The king is changing. Can you feel it?" Sorrow's eyes focused on her. Changing is not the same as changed. He may still choose his empire over the truth. "Maybe," Rachel admitted, "but you gave him the choice. That is more than he gave your people." The dragon's eyes closed. "Wake me when he makes his decision." Rachel stayed there until the guards insisted she leave, watching the last star dragon breathe, and praying she would live long enough to see justice done. 7 days later, the sovereign hall filled for what everyone knew would be the final time. The king's scientific advisors had completed their verification. The data was clear, undeniable. 3 Torvan core systems showed early signs of stellar instability. Sorrow had been telling the truth. Rachel sat in her usual seat, but she felt different now. Over the past week, she had spent hours with Sorrow, recording everything the dragon remembered about star dragon culture, science, and history. The dragon's condition had worsened dramatically. She could barely lift her head anymore. The containment field was killing her slowly, had been for centuries. King Dowrick entered the hall, and this time Chancellor Bryn was not beside him. Rumor said Bryn had been relieved of his duties after arguing too forcefully against what the king was planning. Nobody knew for certain what that plan was. The king settled onto his throne and looked out over the assembled crowd. Representatives from every corner of the empire were here. Military commanders, scientists, diplomats, all waiting. "My advisors have confirmed the Star Dragon's claims regarding stellar instability," the king began. His voice was steady, but Rachel could see the strain in his light patterns. 3 of our core systems face collapse within the next 50 years. Billions of Torvan lives are at risk. Only someone with extensive knowledge of stellar radiation patterns could have predicted this. Only a star dragon. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Rachel saw some people nodding. Others looked angry, as if the truth itself was an insult. "This discovery has forced me to re-examine the history of our conflict with the star dragons. I have reviewed classified documents. I have consulted with historians who remember the early days, and I have learned something that brings me great shame." The hall went quiet. "We lied." The king's light patterns dimmed. 200 years ago, we told the galaxy that a star dragon attacked Helvet 7 without provocation. That was false. Helvet 7 was a research facility where we held star dragons captive. We experimented on them. We studied their ability to survive radiation exposure. We caused them unimaginable pain in pursuit of technology that would benefit the Empire. Rachel heard gasps throughout the hall. Some people stood up, shouting denials. The king waited for silence before continuing. The star dragon that destroyed Helvet 7 was named Sorrow's mother. She was driven mad by our experiments. When she broke free, she destroyed the facility and everyone in it. Yes, millions died, but they died because of what we did first. We created the monster we claimed to fear. After that attack, we hunted all star dragons, not for justice, but to hide our crime. We could not allow any of them to live and tell the truth, so we destroyed an entire species to protect a lie. The shouting grew louder. Military commanders demanded the king recant. Others called for proof. Through it all, the king sat still, letting the chaos wash over him. Finally, he raised his hand. Silence fell gradually. I cannot undo what was done. I cannot bring back the star dragons we killed, but I can do one thing. I can tell the truth, and I can offer mercy to the last of a people we wronged. He stood and walked to the containment field. Sorrow lay motionless inside, her breathing shallow. Sorrow, last of the star dragons, I release you from this sentence of death. I acknowledge the crimes committed against your people, and I ask, though I have no right to ask, for your help in saving billions of Torvan lives from the stellar collapse you predicted. The crowd erupted again. This time the shouting was louder, angrier. Rachel saw military commanders storming toward the exits. Others drew weapons. The king's personal guard moved to protect him. Your Majesty, one of the commanders shouted, you cannot do this. The Empire will see you as weak. Colonies will rebel. You will lose everything. Perhaps, the king said calmly, but I will keep my soul. He turned to the technicians controlling the containment field. Release her, now. The technicians hesitated, looking between the king and the angry commanders. For a moment, Rachel thought they would refuse. Then slowly, they began shutting down the field. The blue energy flickered and died. The force chains dissolved. For the first time in 300 years, Sorrow was free. The dragon did not move at first. Rachel was not sure she could move. Then, with obvious effort, Sorrow lifted her massive head. Her wings, useless for so long, trembled as she tried to unfold them. One wing extended partway before she gave up, too weak to continue. Your Majesty, Sorrow's voice was barely a whisper. You are either the wisest king in history or the most foolish. Time will tell which. Dalric knelt beside the dragon. Can you help us? Can you teach us to predict and manage stellar collapse? Sorrow's eyes met his. I can teach you what I know, but Your Majesty, I am dying. The containment field has poisoned my body. I have perhaps a week left, maybe less. Rachel felt her heart break. They had come so far, changed so much, and it was still too late. Then we will learn what we can in the time you have, the king said, and we will remember what you taught us. There is something else I would ask, Sorrow said. Not for myself, but for my people. Tell our story, the real story, not the lie you told for 2 centuries. Let the galaxy know we were not monsters. We sang to the stars. We danced in solar winds. We loved our children. We were people. I swear it, the king said. On my throne and my honor, I swear the truth will be known. Sorrow's eyes found Rachel in the crowd. Rachel Webb, you will write it. You will make sure humans know. Promise me. Rachel stood. I promise, Sorrow, I will tell everyone. I will make sure they understand. The dragon's body relaxed. Then I can rest. Thank you, both of you, for seeing me, for truly seeing me. Medical teams rushed forward with equipment designed to stabilize the dragon's condition. Scientists gathered, already preparing questions about stellar mechanics and radiation patterns. The king ordered his personal chambers prepared for Sorrow, somewhere more comfortable than the cold floor of the sovereign hall. As they carefully moved the dragon, using anti-gravity platforms and the gentlest force fields available, Rachel walked beside her. The galaxy was watching this broadcast. They were seeing a king choose truth over power. They were seeing the last star dragon freed after centuries of imprisonment. Some would call it justice, some would call it weakness. Rachel did not care what they called it, she knew what it was. It was a beginning, not an ending but a beginning. The first step toward something better. Sorrow's eyes caught hers one more time before the medical teams took her away. In those ancient, dying eyes, Rachel saw something she had not seen before. Peace. The royal chambers had been transformed into a medical facility and classroom combined. Sorrow lay on specially designed cushions that distributed her massive weight evenly. Monitoring equipment surrounded her, tracking vital signs that even the best Torvan doctors barely understood. And around her, day and night, scientists gathered to learn. Rachel sat in her usual corner, recording everything. The dragon's voice grew weaker each day, but her mind remained sharp. She taught them about stellar harmonics, radiation wave patterns, the songs stars sang when they were healthy, and the screams they made when dying. The Torvan scientists absorbed it all desperately, knowing they were learning from a dying library of knowledge. King Dowrick visited every evening. He no longer came as a ruler addressing a subject. He came as a student, sitting on the floor beside Sorrow's cushions, asking questions that had nothing to do with stellar mechanics. He wanted to know about Star Dragon philosophy, their art, their dreams. On the fifth night of her freedom, Sorrow told the king a joke. A real one this time, not a parable or lesson. Just a silly story about a young star dragon who got tangled in a comet's tail and had to be rescued by her embarrassed parents. The king laughed. Not the polite acknowledgement he had given at first, but genuine laughter that made his whole crystalline body ring like a bell. Rachel captured that moment on video. A 1,000-year-old king, sitting on the floor, laughing with a dying dragon. She knew that image would outlive them all. On the seventh day, Sorrow's condition took a sharp turn. The medical teams increased their efforts, but everyone could see it was futile. The poison from 3 centuries of containment had spread too far. Her massive heart was failing. Rachel stayed by her side through the night. The king came at dawn and did not leave. "I am afraid," Sorrow whispered as the second sun rose beyond the crystal windows. "Of death?" the king asked gently. "No, death is just another migration, another journey to a different solar wind. I am afraid of being forgotten. I am the last. When I die, there will be no one left who remembers what it felt like to sing with the stars. No one who knows the old stories. No one who remembers my mother's real name." Rachel leaned forward. "What was her name? You have never told us." "Morning's Grace." She was called Morning's Grace because she would always position herself to catch the first light of any new sun we visited. She said dawn radiation tasted sweeter than any other. Sorrow's eyes grew distant. "She used to tell me stories while we rode the solar winds together. Stories about the first star dragons, about how we learned to dance between gravity wells without being pulled in." "Tell us," the king said. "Tell us everything. We will remember for you." So Sorrow talked, and Rachel recorded. The dragon spoke of star dragon naming ceremonies, where newborns would be brought to 7 different stars to see which radiation they preferred. She described the migration patterns that took her people across the galaxy every 200 years, following the flows of cosmic energy. She explained the meaning behind the songs, the complex mathematics woven into melodies that could guide travelers through space. Hours passed. The medical equipment began to alarm more frequently. The doctors looked at each other with grim faces. They all knew what was coming. "There is one more thing," Sorrow said, her voice barely audible now. "A tradition. When a star dragon dies, others sing them into the dark. The song helps guide them to whatever comes next, but I have no one to sing for me." The king stood. "Then I will sing." Everyone in the room stared at him. Torvins did not sing. Their communication was light and mathematics, not sound. I do not know your songs, Dowrick continued, but I can offer what my people have. Rachel, will you help me? Rachel stood as well, understanding. Yes. They began to hum. A simple melody, something human and Torvin voices could manage together. It was not a Star Dragon song. It was not anything approaching the cosmic symphonies Sorrow had described, but it was sincere. It was offered with love. One by one, the scientists and doctors in the room joined in. Species from a dozen different worlds, all adding their voices to the chorus. The sound filled the chamber, reflected off the crystal walls, grew into something larger than any of them alone. Sorrow's eyes closed, a smile crossed her massive face. Not bad, she whispered, for beginners. We will practice, the king promised. We will learn your songs, we will teach them to others. The star dragons will not be forgotten. I know, I believe you, Sorrow's breathing slowed. King Dowrick. Yes. Thank you for the jokes, thank you for learning to laugh. It was worth it, all of it, just to see you become who you were meant to be. I could not have done it without you. You would have, eventually, I just helped you get there a little faster. She took one more breath. Rachel. I am here. Tell them I was happy at the end. Tell them I forgave. Tell them to forgive themselves too. Life is too short for anything else. I will, I promise. Good, that is good. Sorrow's voice faded to almost nothing. Keep singing, it sounds beautiful. They sang as her breathing stopped. They sang as the medical equipment went silent. They sang as the last star dragon in the galaxy slipped away, surrounded by the very people who had once hunted her kind to extinction. When the song ended, King Dowrick knelt beside Sorrow's body. His light patterns had dimmed to the barest glow. I am sorry, he whispered. I am so sorry. Rachel put a hand on his crystalline shoulder. She knew, and she forgave you. That makes it worse somehow, that she forgave us when we did not deserve it. That is what mercy is, giving grace when it is not deserved. She taught you that. The king stood slowly. I have much work to do. The empire is fracturing. 6 colonies have declared independence. Military commanders are calling for my removal. The truth has a high price. Will you pay it? Yes, every day for the rest of my life I will pay it, because she showed me that truth matters more than power, that being right matters more than being comfortable. Rachel watched as the king walked to the window, looking out over the crystal mountains. He looked smaller now, diminished somehow, but also more real, more honest. What will you do? He asked her. I will write. I will tell Sorrow's story to every human world, to every species that will listen. I will make sure no one forgets. Good, and I will reform the empire, make it something worthy of her forgiveness, make it something that would make her proud. Rachel began gathering her recordings. She had thousands of hours of material. Sorrow's voice teaching, explaining, joking, sharing, a treasure of knowledge that would outlive them all. As she prepared to leave, she noticed something on the cushions where Sorrow had lain. A single scale, loosened in death, shimmering with colors that shifted in the light. She picked it up carefully. It was warm to the touch, still holding the last heat of the dragon who had worn it. May I keep this? She asked the king. Please keep it and remember. 1 year later, Rachel stood before a memorial built in the gardens of the Crystal Palace. The memorial was simple, a pillar of crystal with a single star dragon scale embedded at its heart. Around the base, written in a dozen languages, was Sorrow's final message: forgive. Visitors came daily. Many left jokes written on small pieces of paper, a tradition that had started spontaneously and grown. The best jokes were read aloud at weekly gatherings, and people would laugh and remember the dragon who taught a king to see. King Dowrick had survived the political turmoil. The empire had fractured but rebuilt itself as something better, a federation instead of an empire, a partnership instead of dominion. Change had been painful, but it had been right. Rachel placed a new recording device at the base of the memorial. She had been collecting Star Dragon stories from every corner of the galaxy, piecing together their history from fragments and memories. The work would take decades, but she had time. As she turned to leave, she saw the king approaching. He walked alone these days, without guards or attendants. He had learned that true strength did not require such displays. "I have a joke," he said to her. "Tell me." He told her a story about a star dragon and a crystalline being who met in the dark between stars. They were afraid at first, but then they learned to laugh together, and in that laughter they found understanding, and in that understanding they found friendship, and in that friendship they found hope. The punchline was simple: sometimes the best lights shine in the darkest places. Rachel laughed. It was a good joke. Sorrow would have liked it. They stood together by the memorial as evening fell, watching the stars come out one by one. And somewhere among those stars, Rachel liked to think, a dragon was singing.